Guys, you could see me. Okay, so we're going to get started. We're going to look at the scatter plot from the Broad Street well. Notice I have already drawn the line of best fit in there. That way we can all be working with the exact same information today when we take notes. So the very first thing when we go to put this into an equation in the form y equals mx plus b, the first thing we're going to have to do is, what do you think? What are we going to have to find from this line? We're very quiet today. We're going to have to find the slope. That's the first thing you're going to do. You get that line of best fit, and you want to be able to get that slope. Well, to find the slope of a line, you're going to have to find 2 points. Now, let's all use the exact same points so that our notes end up matching. And if I look over here, this is a pretty good point right here. I'm going to mark them with an X so you can see that it's kind of changed from the points that were given. And let's see. You know what? This point that is actually on the line, I'm going to use that one as well. So once I have identified 2 points that cross at a corner, I'm going to go ahead and just name this point. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. So point 4 and 8. And my other one is, that's at point 8 and 5. Okay, so now that I have 2 points, am I able to find my slope fairly easily? Who remembers how to find the slope now? What do I do? Okay, so I'm going to find the change in the y's, I'm going to find the change in the x's, and I'm going to put it into a fraction form that's going to represent rise over run. So let's see here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take 8 minus 5. So I'm looking at my y values here. I'm subtracting those. And because I started with the 8, then I'm going to start with this point for the x. So that would be 0.4 minus 0.8. And now I just have to do the math. 8 minus 5 is 3. And 4/10 minus 8/10 is a negative 4/10. So there's my rise over run. But to make it make a little bit more sense, in this case, we can change this fraction into a decimal form. That way we can kind of have a better understanding of what we're talking about. Does anyone remember how to change a fraction to a decimal? I'm going to divide. This fraction bar means to divide. So I'm going to take 3 divided by a negative 4/10. And that ends up giving me a negative 7.5. I already went and worked these all out prior to so that we could get through this video just a little bit faster. But changing it to a decimal format is going to help us down the road as far as understanding what the slope means and as far as using it as well. So, what does this slope actually mean? If I'm saying the slope is a negative 7.5 and I'm talking about deaths at the Broad Street well, so what does that mean? This will be one of those things as we write the equations. We want to make sure we understand what the numbers actually stand for. So in this case, my slope means that as I get farther away from the well, for every kilometer that I go, the death rate is going to decrease by 7.5 people. Okay? So my meaning of slope, if you want to get that down, is deaths will decline or decrease, whatever word you want to put down there, by 7.5 people for every kilometer. Okay, so we have found our slope. We found our m, and now we're going to be able to use this because we need to be able to put this into our equation y equals mx plus b. So now we need to find our y-intercept. Sometimes we can just look at the graph and we can get a pretty good idea of where it's going to cross. This looks semi-ish like 11, close to, somewhere in there. But here's the deal. Since we know how to use equations, we can actually use our math to find very precisely where it's going to cross. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my equation y equals mx plus b. And I'm going to use the slope that I just found, and I'm going to use one of my points that I've already found. So I'm just using things that are already here on my graph. So my slope was a negative 7.5. So that goes in for m. So I'm just going to plug that in there for m, negative 7.5. Now, I'm needing to find b. That's what I'm wanting to find. So that means if I know an x and I know a y, I'm going to be able to find b. Well, here's the deal. Go back to your graph. Do I know some x and y coordinates? I do. I don't even have to go through and find anything that's sitting here staring me in the face. So my x coordinate is 0.4. So over here for x, I'm going to put in 0.4. And my y coordinate was 8. So I'm going to plug in those pieces that I know. And the only thing now that I don't know is the y-intercept, which is b. Okay, so now I have two factors here that I'm going to have to multiply first. Before I can go ahead and get b by itself, I'm going to need to simplify this piece right here. And if I take a negative 7.5 and I multiply it by 0.4, I get a negative 3, which is kind of nice. It's this nice whole number. That doesn't always happen. So those two factors multiplied together give me a negative 3. I'm going to still add that y-intercept, and those two together will give me 8. So now I'm down to a one-step equation. I got to get b by itself, because then I'm going to know what my y-intercept is. Well, to get b by itself, I'm going to add 3 to both sides. And b is indeed exactly at 11. So when I was kind of guessing when I looked at the graph before, and I was like, yeah, it looks like it's going to be about 11, but I don't know if it's going to be a little bit above or a little bit below. By using my point and by using the slope that I found out that my y-intercept is indeed exactly at 11. So now I can write my equation. I'm going to take my slope that I found up here. I'm going to take my y-intercept and I'm just going to plug them into y equals mx plus b. Oh, there it is. So I plug my slope in for m, I plug my y-intercept that I just found for b, and now I have an equation that represents what's happening at the Broad Street well. Remember, the slope was saying, hey, we will decrease by 7.5 deaths for every kilometer that we go, but if we're right at the well, if x is at 0, we could expect about 11 deaths based on this information from here.